Okay, so today I'm sitting in front of my Year 10 science class. I'm going to do the revision, and if you know everything that's in this and can apply it, you'll do well on the test. All right, we're going to go through your course lesson by lesson, discussing the things that are necessary to know. SpongeBob, you all right?
Yeah.
Great. So the first thing that we need to understand is about biodiversity. What does the word biodiversity mean? Well done. The range of all life. And there are two major divisions. There are prokaryotes or bacteria, and there are eukaryotes. And eukaryotes, there are 4 different kingdoms. What sort of cell type are you? Animals. What else is there? Plants. Fungi. And single-cell aquatic organisms. Protists. So we need to know terminology. So we'll go through biotic, abiotic, environment, ecosystem. Before we do population, we'll do species. Population. Community. Yes?
Do we have access to the video?
Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube so you can see it.
Okay.
If your mummy and daddy let you go on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. It'd be kind of not sensible if I made the video and didn't let anyone see it. Yes? Right. So, what does biotic mean? If it's a biotic factor, what does that mean? Yeah, a living thing that influences your survival. Okay? So biotic means that it's living, and being a factor means that it influences your survival. What about an abiotic factor? Damaris? Abiotic factor? Non-living. That influence a non-living part of the environment that influences your survival. What about the word environment and ecosystem are very, very similar. Who can give me the difference between an ecosystem and an environment?
An ecosystem is made up of a bunch of different species.
Yeah? Ish? Good generic answer.
The environment is the list of biotic and abiotic factors.
Yeah, and what's the ecosystem?
The interaction.
Well done. An environment is just a list of all the biotic and abiotic factors. And an ecosystem is the interaction, is the relationship between those biotic and abiotic factors. It's how temperature influences the population. It's how the availability of water influences the population. It's an interaction between all of those factors. In the definition of species, there are 3 parts to that definition. Anyone want to give it a go? Right, it's similar individuals. Similar means they're not identical, but they are very similar. They're very much the same, except there are small differences between them. What do we call those small differences?
Variation.
Yes, it is variation. Mutations. Well done. Reproductively isolated. What does reproductively isolated mean?
Can't reproduce with another species.
Well done. You can only breed with the same species. So polar bears can only breed with polar bears. Quokkas can only breed with quokkas. Turtles can only breed with turtles. You can only breed within your species. Homo sapiens can only breed with Homo sapiens. Okay? And when they do breed, what do they make?
Babies.
A little bit more information needed than babies.
Genetically modified.
Oh, are they?
Offspring.
They do make offspring,
On the roll.
but the offspring have to be what?
Viable and fertile.
Fertile and viable. What's fertile mean?
Means you produce the sex cells.
Can make gametes, yes. And viable means?
You live long enough to actually reproduce.
Yes, you live long enough to use them. Okay? A population. Definition of a population.
The amount of species.
The amount of species.
No, the amount of animals. The amount of the non-species.
The amount of the same species is half a definition. What's the other half of the definition? Same species,
Given area.
same place,
Same time.
same time. Same species in the same place and the same time. Definition of community.
Different species. Same place, same time.
Well done. Different species. Different species, same place, same time. Okay? How do we measure biodiversity inside an ecosystem? What is it that we use to determine a number that reflects the amount of biodiversity?
Simpsons.
Sorry?
Simpsons Biodiversity Index.
Well done. Simpsons Biodiversity Index. Simpsons Diversity Index. I will give you the equation in the test. Okay? You don't have to remember it. In year 11, you have to remember it. Okay? So SDI equals 1 minus the sum of n times n minus 1 divided by big N times bn minus 1. It gives us a number between 1 and 0. Okay? We'll go through an example of Simpsons Biodiversity Index after we've finished here. Okay? All good? The last thing we need to know about is a biodiversity hotspot. If we've got a hotspot, what is a biodiversity hotspot?
It's somewhere that hasn't been touched by humans.
Something that, yes, but first of all, I agree, it's isolated from humans. Or it was isolated from humans because humans are everywhere now. Isolated from humans. They had a unique environment. And because the environment is biotic and abiotic factors, it's got unique biotic and abiotic factors. Or it's different than everywhere else on Earth. All right? And because it's different, what else does it have unique?
Species.
Species. Well done. Therefore, it has unique species that are found nowhere else on the Earth. Okay? Why does a species live in a particular place?
Because it has the right mutations.
Yes. To be able to do what?
Survive.
Right.
Survive what?
Selection pressures.
Well done. The selection pressures. So another way of thinking of it is if here we've got 3 different biotic and abiotic factors. We've got abiotic and biotic factor 1, 2, and 3. The place where it can survive is there, because it does have the correct mutations to allow it to survive those 3 things. In reality, there's about 20. So the place that you can live, the place that any species can live, is very tiny because it needs to be able to survive all of the biotic factors and all of the abiotic factors. All good? Any questions about that before I rub it out? No? Right, now we'll go through Simpson's Biodiversity Index. You need to be able to do this. I will give you the definition, but you need to be able to do it. All right. Species n minus 1 and n times n minus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we'll do big N and big N minus 1. All right, and then here we'll do a total of n times n minus 1. Okay, I give you the table, I give you a table. You have to use it, and I will give you the equation. The equation again is D, which is Simpson's Biodiversity Index, is 1 minus the total of n times n minus 1 divided by big N times big N minus 1. Okay? So, species. Give me a species, Mr. Fisher.
Whale.
A whale. And how many whales are there in this ecosystem? 13. Give me another species, Sam.
Dolphin.
Dolphin. How many dolphins are there?
5.
5 dolphins. More whales than dolphins. Give me another species, Pete.
Fish
Is that a species?
or shark or great white shark.
Great white shark. And how many great white sharks are there? 2. And the last species, Alexis?
A clownfish.
A clownfish. And how many clownfish are there? 7. Right. So, these numbers here are the numbers of each of these species. Okay? Big N is all of these added up. So here we've got 20, 27. N minus 1 is 26. So eventually we're going to have to do 27 times 26. Anyone want to do that? 27 times 26? You have a calculator? You will need to bring a calculator to the test on Monday. 702. Now over here, n minus 1, 13 minus 1 is 12. 12 times 13 is 156. 156. 5, that's a 4. 5 times 4 is 20. 2, that's 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 6 is 42. Now, the sum of n times n minus 1. So now the next number is the total of all of these. Okay. 176, 178, 180, 220. Okay? Right with that? Then we go over here. D is 1 minus 220 divided by 702. Three one. 0. I like it to be in 2 decimal places. All right. So 1 minus that, 0.69. Yep. Then you need to say what it means. And what this means is there is 69% that 2 randomly selected individuals, will be different. Well, good. You need to be able to do that. You need to be able to calculate this number, like all of this, put it into the equation and get a number or a decimal, then turn that into a percentage and say what the percentage means. Any questions there? Can I rub that off?
Yep.
No. Next, we get to biogeochemical cycles. Biogeochemical cycle. What is cycling?
I'm losing.
What particular thing is doing the cycling? I can tell you my science joke. Why should you never believe an atom?
It makes everything up.
They make up everything. So here is what is atoms. That wasn't a very good laugh. Minus 10%.
All right.
You don't know. He's the one that laughed appallingly. Right. So which 2 atoms are we talking about? Carbon and nitrogen. All good? Bio means it's going to move through life. Geo means it's going to move through rock. Chemical means it's going to move through chemical reactions like metabolism. And how can we define cycle without using the word cycle? In a continuous fashion over millions of years. Okay? So first of all, we'll tackle the carbon cycle. We'll discuss the major ideas about the carbon cycle. Continuous movement through those things over millions of years. All right, let's do the carbon cycle first. First of all, let's discuss the difference between a reservoir and a sink.
Sink holds a long-term use and reservoir short-term use.
Reservoir is Annalise and Michael? Just recording for YouTube. You should come in. Well, unless I cut her out. Right. So a reservoir is storage for use. A sink is storage for a longer period of time. It gets locked up. Okay? Whereabouts is the reservoir for carbon? And the ocean. The reservoir for carbon is the atmosphere and the ocean. Okay? And the sinks are where it gets locked away. So fossil fuels, wood, which we call biomass. Okay?
Like a tree.
Biomass, wood. Trees are made of wood.
Yeah.
All right. So how does carbon, or what form is the carbon in the atmosphere or in the oceans?
Gas.
Yes. Any particular chemical?
Carbon. No.
Carbon. Isn't that a nitrogen compound? Carbon dioxide is what I was hoping for. I thought he said nitrogen. So carbon dioxide. How does carbon dioxide enter a food chain?
A plant.
Yes, anything in a little bit more information? Photosynthesis. A plant uses photosynthesis. What does it turn the carbon dioxide into?
Yeah, glucose.
Yeah, glucose.
Yeah.
Yeah, glucose. What does a plant use the yeah glucose for?
Energy.
Oh, that's nice. You 7 answer. I'll ring you 10 now.
ATP. Cellular respiration.
Thank you. And then the glucose is used for cellular respiration. So it's put back into the atmosphere. Okay, due to cellular respiration. What do you call it when a plant is eaten by an animal?
Assimilation.
Assimilation. It's the atoms that were in the plant are now in the animal, not in the digestive system, have actually crossed out of the digestive system into the animal. Right. What about, what do we call it when plants and animals, when they die, what happens to them?
They decompose.
They decompose. And when they decompose, the decomposers, what do they do with the carbon? Yes, by what process? Back into the atmosphere because of, starts with C, ends in cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. Now, sometimes the dead plants and animals will become fossil fuels. Yep, that's a sink because it's buried under many layers of earth, locked away. Okay, but we dig it up in mining. We then release the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere through what process?
Combustion.
Combustion. Well done, Knox. Right, so now we've got a cycle. It started in the atmosphere and went round and is now back in the atmosphere. Right? So the atoms on Earth aren't continuously made, they're just reused over and over again. So the atoms inside you were once used in past life. Okay, you're just borrowing them now for the next 100 or 120 years, and when you die, they'll be put back into the earth, and then something else will use them. You're just borrowing them. All right. Any questions there? Carbon cycle is quite straightforward. Next, we've got the nitrogen cycle. Now, the nitrogen cycle is super important. The atmosphere is the major store, the major reservoir, and it's N2 gas. What is important to know about nitrogen gas? It's very stable. It's got a triple covalent bond. It's quite happy staying like that. Okay, so we need We need ways to break that triple bond for it to enter the ecosystem. So here is the soil. That's where the ecosystem is. There are 3 ways. What do we call? I'll tell you. The general way or the generic way is called fixation. And there are 3 types of fixation that allow us to take nitrogen from the atmosphere and put it into the soil. The first one is via humans, and then these 2 are not. What do we call, or what form of nitrogen do humans put into ecosystems? Fertilizer. So the fertilizer goes into the soil. Okay. The next one is biological fixation, is where we've got a plant. What sort of plant? A legume, which is a bean. Peas and beans are legumes. I'll write that word for you there. So this is called biological fixation. That one was called industrial fixation. Legumes have on their roots, they've got little nodules that contain bacteria that take the nitrogen from the atmosphere and put it into the soil. The last one is called atmospheric fixation, and this is lightning. Lightning is very, very, very hot. It breaks the triple bond, breaks the double bond of oxygen. They recombine, and it makes nitrogen compounds fall as rain or fall in the rain. Okay. So now they are the 3 types of fixation, or the way that nitrogen enters an ecosystem. So now here we've got N compounds, nitrogen compounds. Okay? Any nitrogenous compound can become NO2 and then NO3. What do you call NO2? Nitrite. And NO3 minus? Nitrate. Okay? The bacteria that do this are called nitrifying bacteria. The nitrifying bacteria. Okay? Why is it important that it creates nitrate?
Because the plants can only use that.
Plants can only use nitrate. So here, if I've got a plant, the nitrate can enter the plant through the roots. What process do we call that? Assimilation. Okay. Then the plant can be eaten by a bug. You give it fangs and some antennae. What do we call that process? Assimilation. Assimilation is just the word we use where the atom is taken from one life form and enters another life form. Okay? Now, when plants and animals die, there are bacteria that turn them into ammonium. What do we call that process? Ammonification. Right, ammonification. In fact, any time you turn any nitrogenous compound into ammonium, it's called ammonification. Okay? Now, to complete the cycle, we need to return it to the atmosphere. That's also done by a bacterium. What do we call that process?
Cellular respiration.
No. Good try. That's called denitrification. Denitrification, it turns any nitrogenous compound back into nitrogen gas and put back into the atmosphere. Okay? Sometimes they're called denitrifying bacteria. The whole nitrogen cycle relies upon bacteria. Without bacteria, it would stop. Okay? All good? Move on? The next is topic number 3, global warming. Greenhouse gas. There are 4 types of greenhouse gas. We just spoke about one. CO2. There's CH4. What's CH4? Methane. We've got H2O is water, and then we've got NO2, which is nitrous oxide. All of them are a thermal sink. What do they all do? Absorb and store heat. Absorb and store heat. What that means is, if there's the Earth and there's the sun, there are 3 possible outcomes for UV radiation and infrared that's hitting the Earth from the sun. Some of it is put back into space. Some of it is absorbed by the Earth. And some of it bounces back but then enters the atmosphere and is stored by the greenhouse gases. Is the greenhouse effect a bad thing? Why not?
Because you need to keep the Earth warm.
Yes, if the Earth wasn't warm, no life as we know it would exist. It would be too cold. So we do need the greenhouse effect. But now we've got what's called the enhanced greenhouse effect, where we've got so much greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, too much heat is being absorbed, and the Earth is getting too hot. Okay? So this is called global warming. Now, global warming causes climate change. The 2 parts to climate that are changing. Now, it doesn't just mean getting hotter, although the Earth is getting hotter. This year is the hottest year on record, but it's going to be the coldest year for the next decade. What that means is every year is going to get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter on average around the Earth. Okay? So the first one to talk about is temperature. We're going to get an increase in temperature, but then we're also going to get a change. Triangle means change. Going to get a change in rainfall patterns. Climate change just means they're changing. Some people think that climate change means it either has to be raining all the time or has to be drought all the time. It doesn't. It just means the patterns are changing. Okay? Now, if we think about increased temperature, we've got a rising sea level. There are 2 major reasons why we've got rising sea levels. The first one,
Expansion. Thermal expansion.
that's the second one.
No.
The first one is an easy one.
Melting ice cap.
Well done, Sam. Melting ice caps.
Thanks, Sean.
Melting ice caps means it's going from solid into liquid. You're increasing the volume because the amount of atoms is increasing. Right? You're going from a solid into a liquid, and therefore it's increasing volume. So more liquid water is in the oceans. Number 2 is thermal expansion. Number 2 is thermal expansion. What does thermal expansion mean?
When the water heats up, the particles move more,
Yeah.
increasing the volume.
Well done, Sam. Thermal expansion means that as you increase temperature, you increase the kinetic energy of the water molecules, which increases the volume because the fixed amount of matter is expanding, it's filling up more space. All good? Right. Any questions? When did... Oh, I'll do the graph. Let's do 1600s, and here we'll do concentration of carbon dioxide. When did it start to go up?
760.
What happened in 1760? Industrial Revolution.
Then the Green Revolution.
And then 1975 was the Green Revolution, so they got more. Now, because we're burning too many fossil fuels. Okay? The Paris Agreement said that we're going to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. We're already at about 2 degrees. So the world, all the countries of the world made lots of promises to cut their greenhouse emissions, but they all thought someone else was going to do it. So the Paris Agreement is now obsolete because on average global temperatures are now approaching 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Not good. Okay? Right. Ooh, global currents. There are 3 types of currents. There are shore, surface, and deep. What controls shore currents? Wind and moon, or wind and tide. Wind plus, we'll say moon, but you can say tide if you want to. Okay? What about surface? Just wind? Wind only? And deep?
Density,
Which relies upon...
heat or temperature, and salinity.
Well done. So it is density. And the density is dependent upon temperature and salinity. Oh, I've slipped in lowercase. Ah! This is what we call thermohaline. So essentially, if it's got a low density, it will rise. With a high density, it will sink. What is a current?
Moving in the water.
Just movement of water from one place to another. Better than putting on air conditioning. More environmentally friendly. Burning less fossil fuels. Reducing global warming.
Yep.
minimising climate change. Right. So we're going to talk about the effect of temperature and salinity on water movement. All good? What is the general name for the movement of water up and down? Do you need a clue? Starts with C. Convection what? Convection current. The convection current looks like this. So here, water is moving up and then it moves down. So as you increase heat, you decrease density and therefore it rises. When it cools down, so when it gets to the top, it gives its heat off to the atmosphere. Right? If you decrease heat, you increase density and therefore it sinks. So hot water rises, cold water sinks. It's all got to do with the space between the particles. As you heat it up, the particles move further apart. I don't think I should put that on YouTube. What you guys are up to. Okay? The particles move further apart. Density drops so the water rises. And as it gets colder, the particles move close back together, gets heavier, and it sinks. Yes? Any questions there? No? All right. Then we'll go over here to salinity, which is the concentration of salt in the water. How do you define concentration? It's the amount of particles in a fixed volume. Okay? So salinity, we can have, if we're talking about salt water or salt in water. Right. Let's talk about what happens at the ice caps. Ice is made of pure water. Ice is made of pure water. It leaves behind the salt. Therefore, you get an increase in the salt. Square brackets mean concentration. You get an increase in the salt concentration because the salt is left behind. What happens to the weight of that salt water? The weight increases because it's got more salt in it. Increase in weight. Therefore, it sinks. Okay. If you put more water in, so ice caps melting. So you're putting more water in, not taking water out. If you're putting more water in, it gets more dilute. More dilute or lower salinity. Therefore, the weight drops and therefore it rises. Okay? We're good? Right, we move on. Right. Now you need to be aware that animals use the thermohaline conveyor belt for migration to find breeding grounds and their food sources. Okay? Now we're getting on to natural selection. So we're going to talk about the tenets of natural selection. There's 4 of them. Overpopulation, heritable variation, competition, and survival of the fittest. Okay. Overpopulation means that there's more offspring born than the carrying capacity, than the environment can sustain. There's limited resources and there's too many offspring born than can all survive. Okay? Heritable variation means that the parents are going to pass their DNA onto their offspring. In particular, what are they passing on? Mutations. How do you define mutation? Permanent change in the DNA or a permanent change in the genetic code. Right? Competition means you fight for limited resources, or you're fighting against a selection pressure. And survival of the fittest, yes.
What does say?
Carrying capacity. How many individuals can survive in the environment? Okay? Survival of the fittest means that if you've got the correct mutation, you will live. And if you're going to live, what will you do most likely? Reproduce and have offspring. If you're alive, you'll reproduce, and then it flows back to heritable variation, where you pass your DNA onto your offspring. Okay? What do you call the correct mutation? The selective advantage. All good? Right. Any questions? You need to know those in order. Very famous, the tenets of natural selection. It underpins evolution. We quite often say evolution is the process, the mechanism is natural selection. So evolution can be defined as the change in the genetic code over time. There's variation in the population. Oh, shouldn't you be in class? Can you go somewhere else, please? Right. Who can tell me genotype? Yes. Well done. It's an organism's genetic makeup. Jesse, move on. Phenotype. Alexis? Sorry, the? Well done. The physical characteristics. So the genotype is your DNA. The phenotype is the way it looks. When I say the way it looks, it can be the numbers of arms and legs, whether it's got certain enzymes, how it behaves. the environment can only see phenotype. So the way it looks, the physical characteristics are super important. All good? Who can define for me a selection pressure? Damaris? Selection pressure?
The shark. The shark.
Who can define for me?
Oh, define problems posed by the environment.
Well done. Problems posed by the environment. It's a problem posed by the environment. Okay, it's the environment has a whole lot of problems. It's saying to the organism that you're talking about, can you survive this? Can you outrun the predator? Can you hide from the predator? Can you find water? Can you find food? Can you find shelter? Can you find a mate? All of these things you need to be able to solve if you're going to survive. Right? So the problem that the environment is posing to the species is called a selection pressure. Okay? What do we call the answer to the selection pressure? Selective advantage. It is the answer. And what gives rise to the answer? Mutations. Well done. The answer is a mutation. The mutation is the genotype. The mutation is a change in the genetic code, and that affects the characteristics of the organism. So by changing the genetic code with a mutation, there is variation in the population. By changing the genetic code, the population has lots of little variations. Some of them will give you a selective advantage and you'll live and breed and pass on your genes. Some of them will be a disadvantage and you'll die. And when you're dead, you can't pass on your genes. Okay? Variation. Right. All good there? So we'll do an example. Okay? In the 1760s, the Industrial Revolution in London. All right? Here are the trees before the Industrial Revolution. You don't want to do that one. Right. You want to do a different one.
Yeah.
All right. That's the famous one. All right. Just say you guys are a herd of gazelles. You guys know what gazelles are?
Yeah.
There's little deers that hop around and very sprightly. Yep. Into the area moves a lion. The lion here likes to eat gazelles. Which gazelles will have the selective advantage and which gazelles will have a selective disadvantage?
The quick one.
The quick lions. The quick lions?
Oh, the quick gazelle.
The quick gazelles, this is the selection pressure. Here is the selection pressure. The gazelles, there'll be some fast ones and some slow ones. There's variation in the population due to mutation. The fast ones will have a selective advantage. The slow ones will have a selective disadvantage. Which one will pass their alleles on to the next generation? The fast ones will live. The fast ones will live and breed. And that's why P pass their genetic mutations onto the next generation. Heritable variation. The slow ones will die. Can you breed when you're dead? No, it's very hard because you're dead. Okay? You need to know the difference between selection pressures and selective advantage, etc. All good? All right. You need to know about speciation. Now, if I were you and you have to write an essay about speciation, I would draw this plan and stick to the plan. Okay? This is the plan. If you draw it and then stick to it, you'll do well. Biology is all about ideas flowing in the right order to prove a point. So here is the diagram that I would use. OP plus B. GB, GI. Okay, so this is DE, DSP, DSA, DE, DSP. Okay, now if you stick to this plan, you'll do wonderfully well. Right, so the first point that I would make, the original population has variation. What is that variation?
Mutation.
You should pay attention. You haven't been paying attention since the start. And the variation is mutation. The second point you should make is that the original population is split in two, and we've got a geographical barrier. So we're going from one population into two, and it's because of a geographical barrier. What is a very common geographical barrier? A mountain range or an ocean. Okay? Something that the organisms can't cross easily. Okay? And because of that, they're separated. They're isolated. They can't contact each other. Okay? That's geographical isolation. The two populations can't access each other. Okay? The third point that I would make, DE means different environments. And we know that the environment is made of abiotic factors and biotic factors. There's different conditions on either side. There might be different predators on either side of the mountain range. There's going to be different temperatures, there's going to be different rainfall, there's going to be different shelter, there's going to be different food sources. Completely different on both sides. And therefore, you'd have different selection pressures. Different selection, different questions are going to be asked of the populations. On one side, it might say, can you outrun a lion? And this one over here, can you escape an eagle? There's different predators. Okay, so you'll You'll need different mutations to be able to survive the different questions being asked. All right? And because you've got a different question, you're going to have a different answer. If you have a different question, you're always going to have a different answer. All right? So if you've got a different question on this side and this side, the answers will be different. The mutations you require will be different. Okay? Then, the fifth point that I would make is that after millions of years, you're going to have different mutations in each population. So you're going to have different genetic codes. The mutations on this side will be different than the mutations on this side. Okay? RI means reproductively isolated. When we did the definition of species in lesson number 1, what was the definition of a species? Group of similar individuals that can only breed within themselves. A species can only breed with the same species. All right? Now, because the mutations are so different on either side, the DNA is so different, they won't be able to reproduce. So their offspring will not be fertile, and they might not be viable. Because the offspring aren't fertile and viable, we say that speciation has occurred. Okay? So now, instead of having one population, just how we call that population A, we might end up with population or species B and species C. Millions of years, though, that takes. All good? They're the 5 things I would say. Now, the 5 things I would say is not necessarily saying one word. That's a mark, that's a mark, there's a mark, there's a mark, and there's a mark. Okay? It's all about the flow of ideas in the correct order so that it makes sense. Okay? The best way to get the 5 marks is to do your plan and then stick to your plan and put the plan into action. All right? All good? Yeah. Who can define for me fossil? Annalise. Well done. Evidence of past life. There are 3 general types of fossils. The most common one is that it's made of rock or petrified. What's another type?
Impression.
An impression. What do you mean by impression? Like? Do you need a clue?
No, that'd be a trace. Just footprint.
Footprints. Footprints. And the last one is a trace. Like? Sorry? A fossilized poo, correct? A fossilized nest. A fossilized feather. Okay? Right. Conditions for fossilization. So for something to become a fossil, what does it first have to be? Dead. So first of all, it needs to die. And sometimes it dies whilst this second thing is occurring.
Decay.
No.
Sediment builds up.
Rapid burial. It needs to be rapidly buried. Rapid burial. By sediment. So that sediment can be silt in a river. It can be volcanic ash. It can be sap out of a tree. You can fall into a tar pit. You can fall into a glacier. Normally results in death. Low oxygen. What does low oxygen do?
Stops it from decaying.
Stops bacterial decay. Neutral pH. Why don't you want it to be?
It stops the bones dissolving.
I don't even get to say the word.
Not so.
Why don't you want it to be acidic?
So it doesn't decay.
So that you changed your
So it
answer.
doesn't dissolve.
So the bones don't dissolve. If you've got an acidic environment, the bones will dissolve. But what parts fossilise the best?
Hard part.
Hard parts. So you're dead, and you're dead with hard parts. Beaks, claws, etc. Skulls. They're claws. Yep. And then water table high in minerals. Why is that important? Why is having a water table high in minerals important?
So the minerals can replace the bone.
Well done. So the minerals can replace the organic parts of the organism. Okay? All of those have to be perfect. So this is why we don't get fossils everywhere, is because the conditions quite often aren't perfect. Another one is you want to have low disturbance. Like scavengers. Why would you want to have not many scavengers?
So just
Ruin
ruin it all.
it all. It's kind of extreme, more extreme than ruining it all.
So they don't tear it
Can you turn into a fossil if you've been eaten by another organism?
Well, and that's
Very hard. You might be fossilized too.
Well, but they don't eat your bones, do they?
Some do. Do you have a dog? Does your dog eat bones?
Yeah.
Right. Well, good. Right. Now remember, it's one thing is to learn the information, the other thing is to be able to apply it. So what we're going through here is lots of knowledge, and if you understand all of the knowledge, you should at least pass. But the ability of yourself to apply your information will determine how well you do. Okay? So, now we're going to talk about evidence for evolution. So we're going to talk about fossil dating. We'll do absolute first. Absolute fossil dating tells you the actual age of the fossil. And we're going to use here radio isotopic dating. In particular, is going to be carbon-14 dating. How does carbon enter a life form? How, if you were going to turn them into a fossil, Knox, how would the carbon enter you?
If I ate a plant,
What do we call that?
assimilation.
Assimilation. You might eat an animal. But the carbon atoms from the things you eat now enter you. And a certain percentage of your carbon atoms are going to be radioactive. Carbon-14. Carbon-14 is radioactive. Radioactive means that it's got, or it's able to decay. Okay? It will decay. Okay? So we come across the idea of a half-life. Decay means break down. The carbon-14 will break down. So over time, there's less and less carbon-14. How can we define half-life?
Time is 50%.
Well done. The time. It's a time to, or time to, or time for half of atoms to decay. You guys know the half-life of carbon-14? Charlie?
Yeah.
You guys know the half-life of carbon-14?
Yeah.
This is where you provide the answer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do know. It's like, yeah.
I'll give you a clue.
Yeah.
It starts with 5, ends in 730.
5730.
What? Minutes?
Years.
Years. It's 5,730 years. So when you die, so times 0, when you die, you've got 100% of all this carbon-14 you're going to have. Assuming you become fossilized, assuming there's minimal disturbance, mineral-rich water table, low oxygen, non-acidic soils, rapid burial by sediment. After how many years, Charlie, are you going to have 50% of the carbon-14 you started with?
3,000. No. 2,415.
50% is half of 100%.
Yeah.
So how many years does it take to reduce by half?
Just read that. 5,730.
So after 5,730 years, you've now got half the amount of carbon-14. After how many years will you have 25%?
That is a good question.
It is a good question. Do we need to go back to Isaac?
Sure.
You don't want to,
I think
you don't want to shine in front of the class?
I'll share around that.
You know, it's like sharing the knowledge, just sharing the opportunity for success.
11,460.
11,460. What about 12.5%?
Double that. No,
Double that.
22,917.
17,190. And so on. So, if we were to draw a graph of that, so here we've got the percentage of carbon-14. Remember, it's only year 10, but it's able with percentage of carbon-14. It's normally a ratio, but here we've got the percentage amount of carbon-14. When you died, you had 100% of the amount of carbon-14 in your fossils. But it diminishes over time because it breaks down. radioactive decay. So after half-life number 1, there's now 50%. After 2 half-lives, it's now 25%. After 3 half-lives, it's now 12.5%. And so we end up with this. Oh, that was nearly perfect. Okay? And so you can tell how much, or you can tell how long the fossil has been in the ground by the amount of carbon-14 still in the fossil. How long can you rely upon carbon-14 for dating?
Forever.
No! Forever!
Until there's none left.
What's the limitation? There's a couple of limitations. One, it must be organic, which means it's got to be carbon-based. 2, it's only useful up to... starts with a 5 and has 4 zeros. 50,000 years. Only good up to 50,000 years. Okay? There, because the error becomes too great down the end here. Okay? All good? Right. Ooh, now we come to relative. Relative just means if something is older or younger. Okay? So, here is some rock. Okay? Over 1 million years, another layer of sediment is laid down. Then over another layer, another 1 million years, another rock layer is laid down, and another, and another. What do we call these layers of rock? Starts with S. Ends in strata. Strata. So strata, or rock strata, are layers of rock. Which one is the oldest and which one is the youngest? Alexis?
The stuff at the bottom is the oldest.
Well done. The stuff at the bottom is the oldest, and the stuff at the top is the youngest. And we call that the law of superposition, where the youngest is at the top and the oldest is at the bottom. Right. Okay. Now let's talk about an index fossil. What is an index? Obviously, it's a dead thing, but there's 2 main criteria for an index fossil.
Widespread.
Widespread.
It has to be like for a very short period of time.
Well done. Widespread, which means all around the earth, which also means common. And alive for a short period. In geological terms, say in 1 million years. On the geological timescale, how old is the Earth? 4 billion years old, yeah. Anyway, when did life evolve? Like 3 billion, yeah. Somewhere between 3 billion and 4 billion. Okay? So one of the common index fossils, you might have seen this one. Looks like that. It's found all over the earth at a certain time frame. So if we find that fossil, we know that everywhere, no matter where we look, because it was only alive for about 1 million years around the world, if we find that, we get a reference point. Anything above it is younger, anything below it is older. Okay, that's the law of superposition. Now we're going to go through correlation of rock strata. Okay? We're nearly done. You've done well today. Double lesson revision is always hard. Alexis, here we're going to have A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D, and E, and F. Which one of them are we going to find that fancy index fossil in? E. So in layer E, we're going to find that index fossil. And we know that wherever we find that rock layer, it's the same age. Yeah? So over here, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L. So in a different part of the world, we've taken another sample of rock strata, which is just layers of rock. Alexis, which one are we going to find the same fossil? We're going to find it in I. Okay? So the correlation of rock strata means we're going to correlate or match up layers with the same index fossils in them. Okay? So we can say that E is the same as I. Yeah? What seems to be the problem?
It's interesting. It's just a very interesting topic.
Sorry?
It's an interesting topic.
So is picking up rubbish. Right. This is for your benefit, not mine. Okay. I'm trying to help you. So, layer E is the same as layer I. They are the same age. If you could drag them down so that they're at equal places on your page, but you can't. They're stuck on the page. Okay? So, very simply, we need to be able to lay them out from oldest to youngest. Right? So we've got here, if E and I are the same age. Yep. Anything below E is older or younger? Older. So F would be the same as J. F is the same as J. There's nothing below here, so now we're going on to, because there's J, K and L. K and L. Yep. Anything above it is younger. So we could say D and H are the same. D and H. We could say C and G are the same. There's nothing above G, so then we go B and A. B and A. So there is the youngest. There is the oldest. That's the correlation of rock strata. And it uses the position of index fossils. All good? Right. Any questions? Now you're famous because I got you in trouble in a YouTube video. But I haven't exposed you to the world. You don't want to be exposed to the world. No. Right. The last stuff. The last things you need to know. Right. Evidence for evolution is, it comes under the comparative anatomy. So comparing anatomy. In the general rule for comparative anatomy is the more similar it is, the more related it is. But that's only true for one type of evolution. So I'll draw this as a table comparing the two general types of evolution. Okay. So we're going to have divergent evolution and convergent evolution. Diagram. Okay, so these are the columns that we will do for our comparison. Diagram means we're going to draw a diagram to represent divergent and convergent evolution. CA means is there a common ancestor? SP means is there the same selection pressure? SA means is there a same selective advantage? The rule, there is a rule that goes with this particular type of evolution. The features, there's a name for the type of features that we see and an example. Right? And if you know that, that's the knowledge, but then you need to be able to apply it. So you need to be able to look at a circumstance and decide whether there's a common ancestor or not, or does it have homologous features, or you need to apply your information. Okay? So the diagram for divergent evolution is something splits into two. You did that today, speciation. Divergent. Convergent is two things are becoming more similar. They are converging in evolutionary terms. Common ancestor, do these ones have a common ancestor? Do they have the same ancestor? Yes. Do these guys have the same ancestor? No. Selection pressures. What made, when we did speciation, what made the two groups become more different? Different selection pressures. And here we've got the same selection pressures. So they want to be more similar. Okay? SA, if you've got different selection pressures, are you going to have the same answer?
Yeah. No. No.
You've got different questions, therefore you're going to have different answers. Okay? Selective advantage is also going to be different. Okay? You're going to have the same selective advantage. You want to become more similar. The rule here is same structure, different function. You want to, because you've got a common ancestor, you've got the same bone structure. But because you've got to solve different selection pressures, you want to use that bone structure for different purposes. Okay, we call that homologous features. Homologous features. The famous one is the pentadactyl limb. Whereabouts is your you guys have got a pentadactyl limb. Whereabouts is your pentadactyl limb, Jade? Your arm from where to where? Is it, from your scapula, which is your shoulder blade, all the way down to your phalanges. Fingers. Fingers will be fine. From your shoulder blade to your fingers is your pentadactyl limb. Pentadactyl, penta means 5, dactyl means fingers. Okay? So, we've got a human, we've got a horse, we've got a dolphin, and we've got a bat. They've all got a common ancestor. They're all mammals. They've all got a common ancestor. They've all got the same bone structure of their pentadactyl limb from their scapula all the way down to their digits. Okay? Humans, what do humans use their pentadactyl limb for? Grabbing things, writing, anything fine manipulation? Yep. What do horses use their front leg for? The front leg of a horse is actually its arm. Right? They use it for running. What do dolphins use their front arm for?
Clapping.
Huh? Clapping. When you are reborn as a dolphin, I want to see you come back and show me you clapping as a dolphin. What do they use it for? Swimming. And a bat, what does a bat use it for? Flying. So, same common ancestor, same bone structure, but they're using it for different things. Right? So when you're given an example, you need to decide, are they related? And if they are, do they use that feature for different purposes? Okay? Convergent evolution is different structure, same function. And we call these analogous features. Analogous features. And the famous example here is an aquatic predator. So, a dolphin is a mammal, and a shark is a fish. They are not related, but they both have the same niche, which is aquatic predator. So they both have to have the same features. So if they're both aquatic predators, what do they both have to have? Sharp teeth, streamlined body, strong tail. Yep. All of those things mean that they are becoming more similar. Will they ever be the same species? No. All right. So that is everything you need to know and be able to apply in your test.